We're here, baby.
We're live? We live?
We're live
We're
with
live.
Chapped Lips.
Why are your lips so chapped?
Because I was on the fields all weekend in windy Delaware.
Delaware. What were you doing in Delaware?
We were running a tournament with our 3D partners.
I heard Delaware's a pretty flat state.
It is, and you feel the winds. My lips are feeling it. Thanks to Laurie giving me some glue for lip gloss. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling good.
Feeling better?
I'm feeling much better right now.
Your lips do look a little shiny tonight. A little shinier than usual.
My boy Cliff is going to get us on our Facebook page soon. We're running on the. What happened?
It's all good. Just like the game of lacrosse, sometimes you gotta adjust on the fly a little bit. You gotta make changes. If you don't, you don't make those halftime adjustments, you're probably gonna lose the game.
I was just talking about that too to a dad. It's funny, we were talking lacrosse at our clinic last night, and we were talking about how the great coaches make halftime adjustments. And I was saying how Steve Fennell's a really good coach, and I think he's really good because he coaches football. And in football, they have to make adjustments literally after every series. And that's why I think he does such a good job when he plays a team once and then when he plays them again.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's a really good football coach as well.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. I think that prepares you to be a better lacrosse coach when you have to make either in-game adjustments or adjustments, for the game after. If you play the team again, let's say you play them regular season and then the playoffs.
I noticed Fennell, he uses video a lot too to analyze his opponents and figure out what's going on. I think that's something too that I think the better high school coaches, they use video to their advantage better than anyone else, and I think that's why they create more successful programs and teams and win more championships. And I think also you just gotta have that ability to see what's going on and remember plays. I feel like you can't just lean on video like 100% because then you won't be successful in making like the necessary adjustments. And I don't think you even have time to analyze that much in such a short period.
No, but you know how like in basketball when there's a timeout, all the coaches step onto the court and they all kind of like chat for like a minute or two?
Yeah.
Like I think football coaches that also coach lacrosse are used to making adjustments. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think they end up becoming really good lacrosse coaches, or it helps them as lacrosse coaches.
Do you think the same goes for like players? Like do you think players that play football have the ability to make adjustments because they're used to taking order maybe a little bit better in a different sport and then translate it to lacrosse?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think yes. I think multi-sport athletes can in lacrosse basically are much more adaptable. So when something goes wrong or they fall behind by 3 or 4 goals, it's like they can fight through it better than the kid who just plays lacrosse.
Right.
Definitely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a huge asset.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so are we rolling on the FLG Facebook page yet?
Yes, we are.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Cliff, for doing that. So tonight's an interesting night. It's an interesting time. I think tonight's episode that we're going to be bringing to everyone's attention is going to address a position that a lot of boys and girls are in. And in particular, we're going to talk about the recruiting process for the 2020 athletes, which are juniors in high school. Juniors are a huge year, right? I speaking to the boys and girls that we help mentor through this thing that we call the process. It's a lot going on, right? You got usually your hardest year of academics in terms of your course load. You got some kids taking more challenging classes. They're taking classes they have to take to graduate. You got those big tests coming up, like you got either an SAT or an ACT. You have you got usually on varsity sports, right, for whatever sport that you're playing. So you could be playing 2-3 varsity sports, and then for kids that are getting recruited, you got to think about college already, and you're a junior, which for some kids, they feel as though that's when they're supposed to start thinking about college. But in reality, I mean, I don't know if a junior in high school should really be so entrenched in thinking about where they're going, and I think that creates a little bit of stress and anxiety. So I think those are some things that we want to talk about tonight.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things I always discuss with parents and the athlete is you need to make the process an enjoyable experience, because what you're doing is you're escalating the process for the athlete. you're making them think about it usually a year before the regular student. And when you do that, they're not prepared usually. They're not prepared in many ways, mentally, emotionally, and then they're not prepared where they don't, like, there are kids that haven't taken the SATs yet, and they have to think, but they have really good GPA, and they're starting to think about these amazing universities that are recruiting them, but they don't even know if the SAT score for the schools that take SAT and ACT schools, are they going to be good enough to get into that great school?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very stressful time for that. In this case, a 2020 athlete, which is a junior, and next year it'll be a 21. It's their graduating year. When we talk numbers, for those people out there that don't know what we're talking about, it's the graduating year. So 2020 graduates in June of 2020.
I think it also creates stress because, like, my friends are committing to college, right? They're my age. So what does that mean? I'm not committed. My friends are committed. Does that mean they're better than me? Are they better students? Are they better lacrosse players? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, in reality, they're making a decision early in the process because they could be communicated to in, September 1st.
But I know, like, I saw at least 5 kids in the last week on Instagram that posted their commitment. So how is that early? There's always kids starting to commit.
Well, I mean, the reality is that this is a process that should take time. I mean, you're making a huge decision. So if you're a good enough lacrosse player to get called the first few weeks of September by many universities, why would you rush through that process? You're now in the driver's seat. So for the ones that do rush through the process, they've obviously found a school that they think is right for them. But they obviously didn't visit every school because they're a very high-end lacrosse player that's getting a lot of love on the recruiting trail. So it doesn't make any sense to me that why you wouldn't visit every school. I mean, obviously, we know of a 2019 who in 2 days is going to be signing his letter of intent to go play college lacrosse at a great university. He had probably 20 to 25 offers. He visited every one of those schools and evaluated what was the best opportunity for him. It's ironic that while he was going through this, it took him a full year to make that decision. So like right before July 1st or around July 1st, going into his senior year, the end of his junior year, he made the decision where he was going to go to school. Everybody was looking at it like, what's wrong with this student athlete?
That's bizarre. Wait, when did he commit?
He committed in July, but he started getting offers in September. So it was almost 10 months later.
Isn't that weird to wait that long to commit to a school?
Well, it's funny that you just said, you used the word bizarre. We're going to have a part of our show and we're going to call it bizarre or normal. And that's something at the end of the show, we'll do a little test run with the families and they can answer if they think it's bizarre or normal. I was getting college coaches calling me saying, what's wrong with this kid that he's taking so long? Because kids are jumping on opportunities early. I think that's bizarre. I think normal should be take your time, evaluate where is the best fit for you. I mean, it's a very, very important decision. So you should take your time.
Yeah, but if I take my time and all of a sudden, a school that gave me an offer, if I decide to wait, aren't they going to give that spot to another kid? Can I lose that spot?
Well, in most cases, the answer is no, because if you communicate with all the schools that are recruiting you and you're telling them that this is what I want to do, they will wait for you. Now, there is the school that says the 30% I'm going to give you, I need to know by a certain time because they want to possibly give it to someone else. And obviously they're allocating their scholarship money. So that does happen. But at the end of the day, if you're communicating with all the schools and they know where you are in the process, you're in the driver's seat.
There's another thing stressing me out. So besides my friends committing, I've gotten one offer and the coach is telling me just that. I have a certain time to let him know whether or not I'm going to that college. But I don't know if I really want to go there. Should I just accept that offer because it's the only one I've gotten? You know what I mean? Like, I'm afraid if I don't accept the offer, then where am I going to end up going to college?
Well, let's think about it from a standpoint of do you want to go to that school? Because if you don't want to go to that school,
I think I want to go.
Well,
I
think?
mean, I just don't know.
Okay, well, that's why you have to wait until you know. You have to believe it. See, I'm a big believer in the integrity portion of the component that
What does that mean? What do
it
you mean
means.
by
That means when you shake my hand, whatever you told me, you're going to do. Okay? I think that's very, very important. I think it's important in life. What we try to teach our young men and young women is don't rush into anything. Don't be forced into anything. And a coach shouldn't do that to you. And if they do, that questions the integrity of what they're doing. I understand the business aspect of what the college coach has to do. If the college coach says to you, listen, you have to make an offer by November 1st, then you have to make a decision. But if you're not 100% in, you shouldn't be making that decision, in my opinion.
What else is important? Like, talk about integrity. What else is important for someone that might be going through this process that they should have? Like, what are things that college coaches value that you also value and things that you teach?
Well, think about this. Think about this from a college coach's standpoint. Like, think about it from our standpoint when we coach kids. I mean, we talk about it all the time, how much we love. I'll just use right now, I'll talk about our boys 2020 team. There's 26 kids on that team, and I say this all the time. I would let those 26 kids sleep at my house, babysit my kids. They're quality young men, okay? And why are they quality young men? Because they're raised by quality parents. Doesn't a college coach want to have 45 quality people, quality boys or girls or young men or young women playing for him? Isn't that program going to be better? Don't you think that Yale's success last year was built on the character of the kids on that team?
But don't they really just want the best lacrosse players? Isn't that really what college coaches want?
No, they don't want just the best lacrosse players, because the best lacrosse players don't make the best teammates, and you only play 45 to 50% of your roster in a given game. So the reality is, I mean, I was talking to, it's funny, I was talking to a guy named James Gravitt, and some of you people out there might know who he is. He started the company Head Wraps, okay, which is the decals that all the kids wear on their helmets around the country. James's son, he went to high school in Las Vegas. James's son went to University of Denver to play lacrosse. When he was at the University of Denver, he didn't play a lot in the games, but he was like the guy that was the leader of the scout team. He made everybody around him better, okay? He was the guy that when they won the national championship or where they were successful was the reason why the boys that played were prepared. Those intangible characteristics that this young man carried is why Denver was successful. He was as important as the kid who was scoring the goals. And every college coach knows that. Every college coach knows they want to recruit quality boys and girls that will be men and women.
I get that and I appreciate that, but like I don't know if I want to go to a college and like not play, right? I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be an impact player on the team. I want to go to a really good program. People have said pick the school, not the lacrosse program, but like I want to play for a really good program. That's something that's important to me. Is it okay to feel that way?
Well, first of all, if you want to play, you're not guaranteed anything, okay? So the reality is that when you do get recruited, they're projecting that you're going to help their team. But if you don't keep working hard and doing all the things that got you to the point that they recruited you, you're never going to play when you get to that school. It's a projection. There's no guarantees in life. I mean, you know this from your experience of playing at University of Pennsylvania. I mean, there was a young man who got into the school and walked on. I remember he was a Wharton mechanical engineer major. It's like the most difficult major at Penn. And your junior year, he was a senior, he led the team in goals. He was a walk-on. He wasn't recruited. So the reality is you want to pick the best experience for you. And if you do your homework, you'll end up doing that.
I just can't see myself though like applying to a school like a regular student and walking on. Like I really want to be able to post where I'm going on Instagram. I want to commit to a school. I want to post and say, "Hey, I'm going to Hopkins."
Well, that's the ego component, and that's the component that every family has to get through. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what side of the equation you're on, you have to evaluate what really is important in your life. Obviously, I can't speak for every family out there. We all know what the way people react to social media. But at the end of the day, you have to find the right fit for you. And I mean, I talk about this young man. I had a buddy who was a walk-on, and he was on the first national championship team at Syracuse. And in 1983, Syracuse won their first national championship. And his name was Darren Lawler. And he was a walk-on, and he made the team, and he started, and he played in the national championship game as a starter. His son, he ended up raising his son out in San Diego. His son ended up walking on at Middlebury and was like a 3-year starter, and I think he was a captain as a senior. He had an unbelievable career. Maybe because his dad was a walk-on, the ego wasn't so big, and the son was okay with it. But you should use that story to make yourself realize that it's not about the ego. It's about what's going to work best for you. I mean, I was talking to a young man who wants to be graphic design major. Are you going to go to a school that doesn't have graphic design because they recruit you? No, you're going to pick the school that has your major. If it doesn't have your major, why are you going to the school? So there's got to be common sense, in my opinion, and you got to put the ego aside. I get the social media stuff, and I get you want to feel good and you want to get the most likes and the most views, I guess.
And comments.
I understand that that's where our society is right now, but that's not what this process is about. And we'll talk a lot over the next few months about the process and how we help our young men and young ladies through that process.
Can you talk about where we are right now, right? I'm a junior. The fall recruiting stuff for boys and girls is almost done. I'm not committed. Does that mean if I'm not committed over the next couple weeks that I'm not going to end up committing to a college for lacrosse?
Well, the answer to that is a definite no. You will find the right fit for you. My suggestion is to do the homework, to get out there, to go visit schools, both the schools that are recruiting you and the schools that aren't recruiting you, so that you can educate yourself on what you like about the schools.
Should I only be visiting schools if they're recruiting me, or can I just go visit any random school?
You could visit any random school. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't go to a prospect day and spend buku bucks.
Yeah, but I just got an email. I got 3 emails last night from coaches saying, come to my prospect day. They're obviously recruiting me. They want me. Shouldn't I go to that prospect day because I'm getting the emails from them?
No, not unless they're literally calling you right now. If you're in that position as a 2020, you're not going to fly down to North Carolina and go to their prospect day with the dream of being a Tar Heel someday, or being a Duke Blue Devil, or a High Point, or any of those schools down there. That to me is a waste of your time and your money. You should be targeting schools that fit your academic profile, who you are as a person. I mean, you got to self-evaluate in this process. Both yourself and your parents got to help you through this process. The mature adults. That's something that we love to do. What I always tell young athletes is, before we meet, I already know what kind of lacrosse player you are. Send me your transcript. Let me evaluate you from an academic standpoint. Okay, and then we'll sit down and we'll talk about what you want, how far from home, how big a school. The other part is the economics. The part that we just went through this with an athlete that got a big scholarship offer. I mean, it was from a school that he wanted to go to. And then all of a sudden he's like, I can't afford it. Well, you got to think about that as you're going through the process. You got to evaluate how much you're looking at to spend on your education. And that way you can avoid the debt after you're done with college. That's so important through this process. It's an education process for everybody, but you got to know what you're going to spend. I mean, yes, some people have to take out student loans, but you want to evaluate all that.
It just seems bizarre that I've played lacrosse my whole life. I put all this time and energy in. I thought that the reason I did that was so I commit to a school because I'm really good at lacrosse. And now I feel like all these other things are coming into play that I didn't really expect to come into play. So it seems weird to me,
Well, I understand that maybe the youth sports movement has affected some of the young kids' thought processes. But as adults, as parents, we're the grown-ups. We're the ones that are supposed to be smart enough and educate our children of what this whole thing's about, okay? And I understand the 16 and 17-year-old ego, okay? I get it. But at the end of the day, isn't the goal to find a great experience for our children so that they can get an education and hopefully have a good opportunity in life in whatever degree that they're going to do, and evaluate what degree that is? Isn't that the most important thing? Is the most important thing where you play lacrosse? Because when they're 30 years old, the UPenn Princeton game is not going to mean as much. You know what I'm saying? The Cortland Ithaca game doesn't mean as much. So you have to really start to evaluate all that. And I think that's what gets lost a lot. I think one of the things that we have to evaluate, and especially as parents, is what's in our children's best interest. And if they don't do that, if a parent doesn't do that and guide them appropriately, that's when the process, goes askew.
Yeah, Cliff?
So I'm a parent. My child is very good in lacrosse. I don't know anything about lacrosse. I don't even know what I don't know. So how do I evaluate based on what you're saying?
Well, I think there's resources out there, right? There's people that you can lean on. And I think one of the best people that you should lean on that a lot of people choose not to is your high school coach or someone who's leading your community in whatever sport it is you're playing. So in this case, it's lacrosse, right? High school coaches spend more time with kids these days than anyone else, and that's the reality of it. So they can talk about the intangibles, they can talk about all the athletic stuff, and they could probably talk about the type of student you are. So I think that's something that more people need to be doing. And then obviously you play for a club program too. Talk to your club coaches about what's next, what to do. And I think getting the opportunity to sit down and meet with them is something that you're entitled to. And if someone doesn't give you the opportunity to have a conversation or at least a meeting, I think that's a red flag, and I think that should be addressed. There's people out there that can help you and know a lot and will help you.
Yeah, I think it's no different than being ignorant in financial planning. Retirement. How much money should I put away every month? How much money am I going to need when I retire? All the things that maybe the layman doesn't know. When you're talking about college, you should speak to the people that do it for a living. Obviously, we do it for a living. Guidance teachers do it for a living. High school teachers. There's so many. And speak to the colleges. Visit and meet with the admission people. I think that's so important.
Let's go back to the idea of bizarre and normal.
Okay.
Why don't you share a story of a couple years ago when the recruiting rules are different? Explain the situation, the scene, and yes, sorry, we got it.
So before you go into the story,
Yes.
before you go into Mike's story, I just want to say that Mike Ferragiari says these parents really need to understand what a quote scholarship really is. That is what really gets lost. A scholarship to most parents is a full ride, which is totally unrealistic.
Yeah, I think the idea of like what your abilities as an athlete can get you is something that's important to elaborate on. I also think something that's undervalued is the importance of what your grades can get you compared to what your athleticism or your ability to play lacrosse
In the
can get
sport of
you.
lacrosse.
In the sport of lacrosse especially. I think a full ride is very rare. It's something that it's virtually doesn't happen.
We've had one athlete in 12 years.
So we've been doing this for 12 years. There's one athlete. And other people have been pretty close, but maybe a couple, right? You can probably count on one hand the other people that got between 75 and 90% of, a scholarship.
Yep.
So I think that's the first point. The second thing is, depending on the type of school that you're looking at will depend on how much scholarship money you can get. And scholarship money can come from, again, your grades, can come from your athleticism. You can get money through grants, which are given to you that are budgeted and allocated from different universities, depending, again, on what type of school it is. In our experience, what would you say the number one thing that kids get the most money on is because of?
Well, we were talking about an athlete who's one of our favorite kids who finished his career at Stevens Tech, and
Dallas Creamer,
Dallas Creamer.
all name team.
He was on the all-name team, and what a great young man this guy is. And he was a really bright kid, great lacrosse player, great athlete. And he went to a Division III school, Stevens Institute of Technology, and killed it. Was an All-American last year and a captain when he graduated. And most of his money came from the academic side. Division III doesn't give athletic, and he got a great package where he went to a very expensive school for not a ridiculous amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more money in Division III lacrosse than there is in Division I lacrosse. That's the biggest misnomer out there. 12.6 scholarships, they get divvied up amongst 30 kids on the roster, right? If you think about it, you could do the math. But you go to a school like Stevens and you get $25,000 in academic help, right? And you might get a grant, and all of a sudden that $65,000 a year school is costing you $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people just have to do their homework, like we talked earlier.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, we got a question for you. So it's from Terry Glatt. Please describe the timing for recruiting 2020s now and going forward through the senior year.
Yeah. Well, again, now we would consider early part of the process. And I think a point that we're trying to get across tonight is the fact that you see all these kids committing. In reality, it's not a lot of kids. It's similar to why the things that you see on the news seem like, the entire world's on fire, when in reality a small portion is. And I think, the media and what's out there kind of shows as if a lot of kids are committing in the 20 class. In reality, it's a small amount. And in reality, we're in the beginning. And this is a process that can go literally until sometimes May of your senior year. You could probably name a couple kids off the top of your head who have committed to some of the best schools, Division I schools in the country, in May of their senior year, and then also to maybe some of the smaller Division II or III schools, or maybe go play club, apply, get waitlisted at, Alabama University, and then eventually get in, late in their senior year. So, I think the process is different for everybody. Right now, it's definitely early on, but again, we're talking about right now what's most important, and that's basically, you have a week to maybe play in a tournament, compete, go to a prospect day, and build a highlight video, start networking, and make visits. The winter is a great time to get on college campuses. Like, it's usually not much going on in the month of December. It's still lively, it's active. There's a lot of kids on campus. You might have a school break coming up with Thanksgiving, and then also winter break. So time for a family to maybe jump in the car, and then for not much money, you can go check out a lot of schools and see a lot of things that can really open up your eyes and help out your son or daughter figure out what they want at the next level. So
I think it's so important that everybody educates themselves on everything about the process. And I think one of the biggest problems is they don't put the time in.
Yep.
Okay? Obviously, we remember what we did in your junior year, February break. You put the time in, and you got to experience a lot of different types of schools, and then you got to evaluate it. And then when your recruiting got crazy in June and July, you got to be able to make your decision in August or September of your senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you guys have a lot of questions rolling in right now. So FVLAX, you touched on the emails versus real contacts. How should kids handle the database-driven contacts via club teams or tourneys registrations and prospect days?
Yeah, so I think I kind of understand where that's coming from, because we experience this a lot with our families. Like, if you're a lacrosse player, you fall into a lot of databases at different schools, and as a result, you get a lot of blast emails, what might look personalized, some aren't, some might be, asking you to maybe come to an event at a school. And obviously you can't go to everything. You just don't have enough time. Even if you had enough money, you wouldn't have enough time. So it's important to understand what to go to and what not to go to. We always tell our athletes, like, forward the email to us. Have some sort of resource, whether it be a high school coach or your club coaches or a friend who's involved in the lacrosse world, so you know exactly what you should be going to and what you shouldn't, or what's personalized and what's not. And something we tried to get across earlier in the show, which is important, is things that might seem personalized aren't always maybe what they seem. It might be a result of a coach trying to fill up an event, or maybe a coach saw something that they liked at a tournament of yours, and and they want to get you back onto campus, but in reality, they're maybe not targeting that specific class, or maybe they're not targeting that specific position. So I think if you're not really sure and you really like a school, try to find a way to connect with the coach by maybe sending an email back or calling them saying, hey, how interested are you in me? Listen, it's not that easy for me to get to your prospect day. It takes a lot of maneuvering on my schedule, my parents' schedule, to get to your campus and get in front of you. So just let me know, honestly, if you don't mind, like, how interested are you? And I think if you can't get to the coach for whatever reason and get that information, you should lean on someone else who can contact those coaches and get that information, because I think that'll allow you to really target, I think, schools that you can end up at one day.
We did it today. We communicated with a school, and we realized that they're trying to fill up their prospect day, and we told our athlete not to go. It was that simple.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 2020 athlete. He's not getting phone calls from the school. They can call him.
Mm-hmm.
They can text him.
Mm-hmm.
They're not.
Yep.
So what are you getting in an airplane for and spending all your money for?
Sure.
I mean, you're better off going to a showcase with 50 schools, and then 20 of the schools might like you,
Yeah.
than going to one school that hasn't even contacted you.
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I got a question for you guys.
Sure.
Do any of these schools ever pay for you to come out to see them? Do they?
They're not allowed to pay.
Oh, they're not.
They're not allowed to pay until it's an official visit, which means they can give you an official visit in your junior year. Not a lot of schools are doing that. Some are, but not a lot. But in your senior year, what they usually do is, to the kids that are committed and already gotten their NLI or gotten their acceptance, they bring all their recruits in and they do an official visit. Like BU, they'll bring them all in and they'll go to a hockey game. Or, a school like Notre Dame would do the same thing. Alabama
basketball
might
game.
do a
Yep.
football game.
Yeah.
That Alabama doesn't have varsity lacrosse.
UConn goes to a girls hoops game, for the
Exactly.
girl recruits.
Yeah, because that's big time.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that goes on.
Yeah. Any other questions you want to maybe roll out there?
You guys are good right now. This is what's happening once again. Like last week, your fan base is responding to they're answering their own questions. So as much as I send a question to you guys, the other people who are reading it are helping out. Everybody's helping each other out here.
Yep.
It's kind of cool.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
That's because the community is a very tight-knit community, and they want to help each other. Because, if someone has a bit of information, they want to share that. I've noticed that a lot. Just not to play devil's advocate, but just be careful, because, and I've said this to all of our athletes, every person is their own island, because everybody has different likes and dislikes. So while one student athlete might have done this and it worked for them, another student athlete has to do something different to make it work for them. So my suggestion is, like we spoke earlier, speak to the people that know your kid the best and are just looking out for their best interest. Not that the other parents aren't.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily always work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're basically saying, like, if some mom or dad says something to you on the sideline, don't hold that as gospel just because, like, they had an older kid who went through the recruiting process. It's important to talk to other people and get their info, but, it doesn't mean it's the truth.
I have another question for you.
Yep.
So Terry Glatt wants to know, is a non-response to an email sent to a coach at this point you met previously a certain lack of interest?
It could be. It could be lack of interest. It could also be, the coach maybe hasn't gotten to the email and gotten back to you. It really depends the circumstance and how that contact was initiated. I think that's important to know. Like we talked about earlier, if a coach hasn't called you yet, and it's all just been emails, or maybe it's just been a couple like generic emails and maybe one response and that's it, that seems like a pretty light contact. It seems like pretty light interest. But if you got a phone call and then now you're following up and communicating amongst one another, maybe through email, that's a little bit of a different story. But usually, when you have that first phone call, the follow-up conversations are either through text message or other phone calls.
Got it.
So, yeah.
I want to touch on something that I think is so important through this process. And this is something that transpired today with a group of my student athletes. that play for the FLG program. So I got an email from a coach saying I reached out to these kids, and out of the 5 kids I reached out to, only 2 of them had responded. Respond to every email, every text, every phone call. 1, it's respectful. I don't care if you never heard of the school, okay? That coach, he does it for a living, okay? And he's good at it, okay? The guy who coaches at a school that you never heard of is just as good a coach as the guy who coaches at the school you have heard of. That's number 1, okay? That's respect. Number 2, okay, that young man or young woman that's recruiting you, okay, might very well, okay, leave that school and go to a school that you might have interest in. And they're still going to want to recruit you. But I'm going to tell you something. If you're disrespectful, I wouldn't recruit you, okay? I told the story, I don't know if I ever told it on one of our shows, about the young man who wanted to go to a school, told me he wanted to go to school. When I reached out to the coach said to him, I've been recruiting him for a year. And he never responded. And when I asked the kid, he goes, yeah. I go, well, now you think that the guy's going to want to talk to you after 1 whole year? You didn't respond to 1 email? I mean, come on. Is there any common sense here that you're not going to respond? I mean, I just think it's disrespectful. I mean, we get solicited all the time at work. You respond. I appreciate the email. It's not for us right now. That's it. Or, thanks for your interest, coach. I really appreciate your interest, but right now I'm looking at other schools. It's respect. That's all it is. I don't think that's so difficult. And these people make it sound like they get all these emails. 90% of the emails are spam, right?
Yeah.
They're prospect day emails. You know, when a coach texts you or calls you or sends an email and says, I saw you play at blah, 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 and I'm interested in you and I'd like to set up a phone call, and you don't respond to that, that doesn't fly with me. I wouldn't recruit the kid, right? We go back to integrity. We go back to all the intangibles that we talk about with our kids, right? And then now you don't have those characteristics. You lose those characteristics because it's a school that you think you don't have interest in. And the funny thing is most of these kids don't even know what the school's about.
Yeah, the funny thing is a lot of times it's actually a pretty good fit for those kids. They just don't know it yet. We know it because we've been through it with hundreds of kids. But, because the school has like a weird sounding name or the color turns them off or they've never heard of it. They don't respond. It's like the dumbest reasons, it could be like the littlest thing. So that's why you should always explore. You never know what you're going to find out. You might like it. I agree. It's respect. It's the intangibles. It's really what's right. But also, you never know. It might actually benefit you. So
It's funny, our 2019s went to visit some schools that a couple we haven't seen, and they would tell me how nice they are. And I'm excited. I want to go see those schools now.
sure.
So when someone tells you you got to check out this school,
Yeah.
so that's why you lean on your resources.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the best way to communicate to the school?
Depends on how they communicate with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it could be tough to get in touch with a school. I think you sometimes have to lean on other people. You got to find workarounds, but usually on any school website you can find a phone number or email where you can reach out. So
The biggest problem, one of the biggest problems, and this is in society as a whole, when you don't want to hear the answer, you don't ask the question. You know what I mean? I wanted to play football at Notre Dame, so Ara Parsegian, I never called him and asked him why he didn't recruit me. Because I didn't want him to tell me that, because you run a 5 flat 40 and you're not even that good and you probably can't even play college football.
and you're 5'8",
But they don't ask the question. Just
Yeah.
ask the question.
and you have chapped lips.
I have really chapped lips. Thanks for pointing that out. No close-ups, guys. No close-ups.
Corey, that was very funny. Okay.
All right, bizarre normal. That's gonna be a segment on our show.
Yeah.
Talk.
Can I
Yeah.
kind of help you with that term?
Sure.
It's the actual expression that I made up about 40 years ago is what's bizarre becomes normal and what's normal becomes bizarre.
Yes, we know that. But the show is having this is going to have this because of this, and we'll ask the question. I don't even remember the question. What was the question that we were going to do?
Which hopefully ties into
But you didn't
what
ask
Cliff.
permission to change my.
You'll like it though.
I didn't
trust
realize
me.
it was trademarked.
You didn't trademark it, Cliff.
Don't sue us.
Okay, so what was the question that we were going to ask?
You're going to talk about the recruiting, when the recruiting rules were different.
Oh, the
A mom asked you a question.
Oh,
about the
that's
kids in the
right.
program.
That's right. Good memory, Core Man. The old man's losing his mind. Okay, so I'll take you through this. So back 2 years ago, but this was the kids are seniors, so they were in ninth grade. So 3 years ago, the rules were different, and they could recruit 8th and ninth graders. They literally, if I called a coach, and usually how it happened was a coach would call someone like ourselves and say, hey, I really like, Joey Smith. Have him call me, and he gives me his cell phone number, and then he gets the phone call, blah, 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 and they'd recruit him. And a mom said to me, when all these boys were in ninth grade, does it bother you, meaning me as a club director, that more of your ninth graders are not committed? Well, for those of you that watch this 30-minute episode, I'm sure you can answer that. But I'd like to hear from the people watching, do they think that's bizarre, that question? Or do they think that's normal?
Well, I think, and to Cliff's point, back then, a lot of people would have probably been curious and would have asked the same question. Like, that would have been a normal thing to think about. I think today it's bizarre to hear someone say that. It sounds ridiculous.
Well,
Like,
what's ridiculous is a ninth grader thinking about college. That's ridiculous. What's ridiculous is a ninth grader should be worried about getting through the hallways of his first high school experience and not getting pushed into a locker by a senior, or a ninth grader figuring out his new high school experience of going from class to class to class to class when he came from the middle school where maybe he wasn't doing that. So that's more normal.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about something. The problem is in our little bubble, our little lacrosse bubble, people start to take things and evaluate it. And it's funny because all those ninth graders that did commit, as you and I know, are now going to different schools. Why are they going to different schools, Core?
Probably because they didn't really know what they wanted when they were in, 14 years old. And now when they're 18, they have a little bit of a clearer picture and direction of what they want to do at the next level. I would hope.
So, I mean, I'm blown away by the ignorance of parents. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. What I'm saying is you need to look at it through the eyes of, this is your child making a decision where they're going to go to a school. You're going to tell that child in ninth grade to make that decision? Is that not bizarre? Is that not the definition of bizarre?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a quick question, and then I have some responses to your question. So Katya wants to know, after you meet a coach and they tell you that they're interested in you, how long does it usually take before they make you an offer?
There's no definitive answer there. Usually, in many cases, the schools want to know you're interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't throw enough. I'll give you an example. I remember Coach Pressler at Bryant told one of our athletes, we don't put pressure on you, but the minute you say that you're interested and we're in like your top 2 or 3, we're going to make you an offer, and then we're not giving you a big window. You know what I mean? Because so that's the way he does it. But every school's different. Every school is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, everyone who's commented is answering bizarre
Not one normal?
to your question. Not one normal.
Okay.
Sorry, Mike. Not one normal.
No, I didn't expect to hear. But I
Yeah.
mean, there's always one of those, but.
One what? Normal person?
Yeah. But
What is normal? Let's just start there.
it's so
Yeah.
it's so true. It's so true.
All right, so there's our show for tonight. We talked about one of the segments we're going to be diving into when we get going after the new year, which we're pretty excited about. in future shows in the next couple weeks, we're going to start actually talking some Long Island High School lacrosse, which I'm excited to start talking about because we spend pretty much every week and every day going to a different game throughout the spring. And we've gotten a lot of submissions from the high school coaches around Long Island telling us about their programs. So we're going to share with you who we think are going to be successful in the upcoming year, who are some sleeper teams, who are some boys and girls who are standout players. We're going to start promoting a lot of players and coaches and programs on Long Island. So we'll definitely be talking about that in the coming weeks. Recruiting will be part of the conversation, as always. We'll be talking about the youth sports movement. And we're going to start in the next couple weeks introducing some of the guests that we're going to be bringing onto the show. We have already a really nice lineup. We're getting actually more interest each and every day from people that want to be a part of the show. So we're just trying to find the perfect fit. We're trying to find some pretty big names and interesting people from the lacrosse world that we're going to bring onto the show. And I think you guys are really going to like what we have in store. So we appreciate everyone tuning in each week and your interest and your comments and your questions and the interactions, because I think the more you talk about the topics that we're discussing here on the show, I think the more people can be educated and the more interesting it could be. So we appreciate everyone's involvement tonight, and we appreciate everyone tuning in.
We're also going to do something that we've done for the young men and young women in the FLG program. We're going to have a webinar, but it's going to be different than because we have this great production. We're going to bring college coaches on and have them remotely talk and answer questions from all our guests. We did this 2 years ago. We do it every year.
Yeah.
We bring a Division 1, 2, and 3, and possibly a club coach, and we'll have them all from wherever they are, and they'll be on the show, and they'll answer questions. And
we'll have a boys' night and a girls' night.
Exactly.
So we'll have head coaches from D1, 2, 3.
Might even have assistants.
Yeah, maybe assistants.
Got to get some good personalities, right?
Absolutely. Good personalities, good schools, good programs. People that are willing to share valuable information and help you. That's really what it's about. So, that's going to be really exciting. We got that coming up soon too.
I'm real excited for that. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you.